Hello, and welcome to PR Future. I'm Fred Cook, and this week I'm joined by an incredible panel to discuss our latest USC Center for PR Relevance Report. This year it's called Activating AI and was created in collaboration with Microsoft. Joining me are Jeff Beringer, who's the Chief AI Officer at Golin, Sona-Iliffe Moon, who's the CCO at Yahoo, Faryar Borhani, the CCO at Encore Capital Group, Christina Bellantoni, a USC professor, and Michael Kittilson, a USC graduate student. So I thought I'd start with Sona. Sona, you've worked at a lot of big companies. You're at Yahoo now. What have you seen happen over the last 12 months with AI that's made you open your eyes a little bit?
I mean, just that we're living through another paradigm shift, like the printing press, like broadcast media, like personal computing, like social media. And those who do lean in will disproportionately benefit. It reminds me of the shift to digital media in that if you don't figure out a way to make AI part of not just your product portfolio, but part of your communications and marketing, you'll essentially get left behind. And I think there's a lot of eagerness right now for communicators to start adopting AI. I think there was a recent Muckrack survey that shared that 3 out of 4 comms pros are using it every single day. So the number has gone up significantly over the last year. And I think we find ourselves in a place where we are moving, we are experimenting, but we have perhaps not paused and reflected on how we guide it in our industry. For example, what are the principles? Are we essentially missing foundational strength building by skipping levels of the video game? So there's a lot of open questions that come from this enthusiasm of adopting AI, but seeing communicators significantly increase their interest and practice of AI in their communications and also their marketing, but needing principles, and then also considering how we cultivate talent and whether AI tools makes it easier or harder in the long term.
Yahoo is kind of a technology company. I think of them as a tech company. Do you feel like you're adopting AI more quickly because of that?
Yeah, I would consider Yahoo a tech company and one that's been around for 3 decades as of March, which is exciting. We definitely have always used AI in our products, and now we're leaning more into different use cases in some of the products that we built. So being able to get report outs from our sports apps, or even in our news where you can easily get a summary around a current event from multiple news sources. So we're definitely leaning into it across the board. It's in our products, we're using it in our communications. And it's also important as a communicator to understand how it's working in your products.
Jeff, what I sense is that agencies are moving faster into AI than corporate clients. Do you feel that is the case?
I think it's a mixed bag, to be honest. I think agencies were maybe a little more aggressive last year in making some investments because our livelihoods depend on it and being great counselors and capable supporters of our clients. So I think there were investments that were made by agencies last year, but I see more and more clients that are investing in the same ways that we are, and they're focusing on the same things that we are. So the big shift I've seen in the last year is I think we got away from achieving the impact we wanted from AI last year because too much focus was on tools and technology and not enough on asking basic questions like, what are the problems we're trying to solve? What part of our work are we trying to make better to get to better results? And I think some of that is getting resolved now, that people are asking the right kinds of questions. When results didn't come from just licensing tools alone, people are being more deliberate about how and where they're applying AI. And I think we're starting to see the benefits of that coming in terms of better work. At least we're seeing it inside of our own walls.
You have a new job, right? A new title?
I do. I'm our company's first and hopefully not our last Chief AI Officer.
Are many agencies following that structure, creating Chief AI Officers?
I think a lot of agencies have lots of people focused on this area right now. They may be called different things. In our own firm, I have a full-time job that's focused on AI transformation, but everybody in our agency is involved in our agency's evolution. Our entire executive leadership team have assigned responsibilities in different areas as part of our transformation. And so it's kind of a team effort.
Are lots of clients asking you for advice?
Yep. But the questions have changed. Last year, lots of the questions were around help us understand this, help us understand the opportunities, help inspire us. Now, what we hear most from clients is help us get to implementation and results faster. And so our focus now is how we can integrate these tools safely, swiftly, in service of elevating our work. The efficiency gains are there. Everybody's starting to see efficiency gains. That's sort of table stakes, but we're really focused on how can this help unlock efficacy and up-level the results.
Faryar, how about you? How is AI expanding in your universe?
Well, it's fascinating because I'm here listening to this. I thought I was the contrarian in the group because my essay was all about not implementing AI at AI speeds, and Jeff and Sona are talking about not skipping levels in video games, and getting back to basics, which I fully appreciate. We're a financial services company in a really highly regulated industry, obviously. And from the beginning, everybody was incredibly excited, like they were at every company, about what this means. And, AI and ML have been around forever, but felt like 2 years ago, it just became like the new thing. And of course, everyone's still talking about it every single day. That's why we're here. Everybody was really excited about it. They were adopting it like crazy, and they were willing to sort of go past policies and processes to almost get these things enabled because they thought they were going to gain those efficiency gains. And they did, but it was the Wild West. And so we quickly shut that down, at least at our end. And it helped us think about the basics, I think, first, which I'm very grateful for. I think a lot of people at the company were knocking on the door saying, why aren't we doing this faster? Why aren't we implementing it? Everybody else is doing it, but we aren't. And I think now everybody's very grateful that we have been slow playing it. We have the governance in place to sort of control it and better understand it. We don't still fully understand it. I don't know if everybody fully does. We certainly don't. So we have more questions than we have answers, but we're okay with that because we've slowed it down from the beginning. So, some really interesting use cases, mostly around efficiency and workflow. We're not really using it quite yet to create some step change type of initiatives, but we'll get there. And again, we're happy that we're not running 100 miles an hour. It sounds like some people are slowing down. Maybe they gain some advantages by running 100 miles an hour in the beginning, but we're okay with not being the leader. We're okay being a fast follower.
In our survey, we asked people what were their biggest concerns about AI. And misinformation was right up there. Security was on the list at the top. What do you think, from Encore's point of view, the issues are?
Consumer data, that's our oil, right? And so for us, if any of that leaks, obviously we have real regulatory concerns early on because we didn't fully understand it. Not just misinformation, but data security and privacy is obviously the biggest thing for us. And so if we're putting proprietary and confidential information into these tools without really understanding where any of that information might end up or who has access to it, that's the biggest thing driving almost every decision around AI.
It's all about security.
All about security every day.
Sona, how about at Yahoo? Is it more misinformation or making sure everything's accurate, or is it security also?
I think it's more accuracy is our area of focus. I think the primary area is around, our Yahoo News product, which is desktop and an app. And it's the number one news site in the US. It's an aggregator with over 1,000 publishers. And, the fact that there's an ecosystem with that many publishers helps with accurate information, or at least a well-rounded point of view. But where we use AI, we have AI-powered article summaries, which are really helpful, right? Because when you use AI to pull from multiple sources instead of from multiple news sources versus the whole internet within a closed system, you reduce the risk of error or inaccuracy. So that type of summarization has been really important for us. And then beyond that, we also have a focus on curation. We're using AI alongside an editorial team because we do curate a substantial number of stories each day on Yahoo News. And so our editors are using these tools to surface stories that might require more human review too. So it's definitely a great partnership and workflow across the two, but definitely, human impact.
That's interesting. We had someone from Bloomberg come to USC a few years ago, and they said that about a third of their stories were generated by AI. Do you have any idea from Yahoo's perspective how much of the news is generated by computers?
I don't actually have an accurate answer for that, but what I would say is we work with publishers and are expecting those are written by reporters.
How do you fact check on AI driven information. Is there a way to do that?
Well, we have our editorial guidelines in the AI systems, and that helps us with consistency and quality across the board. So the tools do actually help us flag any content that might need the eye of an editor to determine if it meets our standards. So we apply AI in our editorial process, and that's helped our workflow and allowed our editorial team to scale.
Jeff, how about you? Is there any talk about having some kind of monitoring so that you're making sure that people in the agency are sending out information that's accurate?
Yeah, and we're also looking at where misinformation about clients comes from and how it's spreading. We have some tech partnerships with some interesting providers that can pull data on where misinformation begins, how it's spreading, are bad actors involved, and it helps us kind of manage those things. The other thing that's really materialized in the last year or so is the data on what people are actually searching for in popular AI search tools and what's generating those results. Where are the systems being trained on, what information is authoritative, and so on. And that's now impacting how we think about things like media lists. It's not just the outlets with the biggest impressions anymore. It's if we place a story in this location, do we have the ability to train AI systems so that when a journalist or a consumer asks about a brand, they're going to get a positive story and the real story about our company because we've placed the story in the place that trains AI systems. So there's a lot of new tools and data to help us navigate all this stuff better, both disinformation and misinformation, but also just thinking proactively about how do you get your positive and current story out there so that AI systems can train.
Let me ask all of you. I'll start with you, Jeff. How are you training people at the agency to use AI?
So we're attacking it in a few different ways. First of all, we think that there's no better way to learn AI than by doing. So we're focusing a lot of our attention to learn in the flow of work, safely, but in the flow of work. So we do have some foundational activities and resources for every employee. So this year we launched a learning management system, and it's entirely around AI education. Basics, so things like ethics, transparency, our policies, our tools, but also, and more importantly, it's about how people can use AI in their specific role at the agency. So we have dedicated training for strategists and creators and engagement pros and so on. So we've really tried to make learning about AI contextual to the job that people have in the agency, because AI can solve a million different things, but unless you know how to use it for what you do, it's kind of a novelty.
Faryar, how about you? How about at Encore? Are you doing AI training?
Yeah, so if you want access to AI at Encore, what you have to do is go through a pretty lengthy training program. Right. So it would take you a couple of days to go through it. It's at your own pace. You know what you're getting yourself into. A lot of it has been sourced from many of the vendors that we work with. So we ask them and lean on them to provide some of the training materials too. And then we have a pretty robust governance process. We have a center of excellence that obviously reviews every vendor that we bring in or tool that we bring on. And then we have an executive steering committee that sits over that. Both of them, in sort of training exercises and that type of thing on specific topics, which I think is helpful. A lot of it is slowing down as much as we can to get smart on what we don't know. And as we have questions that pop up, we just try to bring in experts. We don't pretend to have all the answers, obviously.
Sona, do you do the same thing?
Somewhat. We definitely have a learning mindset right now. We're piloting and we're experimenting across the board. We have a few less sophisticated ways here. We talk about it every week in our weekly team meetings. We have share out where people share new tools that they're using. We have our team offsite where our theme is, activating AI, and we have experts coming in to train. And the reality is every week there's a new application of the tool or a new tool. So continuing to experiment feels really important to us. We have a few key accounts that we use across the board, are like ChatGPT, Claude, Grammarly, Yahoo's AI chat, LinkedIn's writing assistant, and then different tools across marketing as well. But we're in an always-on experimenting mode, and a regular share out is kind of expected across the team. And the theme of our team offsite is activating AI.
That's the title of our report. Christina, let's talk about USC and the students. Are you finding a lot of enthusiasm and interest in the Media Center about using AI?
Yeah, and this is a tricky one because with journalism, so much of the value is what you just talked about, Sona, of like you expect that it's reporters doing the reporting. But if it's reporting the scores of a sports game or something, these are things that tools can do for you, and you can save that human capital for talking to people or gleaning more information or digging or filing a FOIA request. And we already know that so many news outlets are using it as part of the tools. And so in here, it's a little tricky. We discourage its use. We tell students, we want you to find information, verify information, speak to humans, interpret what you've learned for a general audience. But we don't say you can't use AI to help you transcribe. But we do have a system where, let's say a student used the transcription and then said to the AI, please identify 3 quotes that would be good in my story. That would be an academic integrity violation here. And so we're finding a little bit of conflict because we know people are using it in pretty much every single other profession regularly to do their day-to-day work. And yet here in journalism profession, where we're trying to train them to go into newsrooms, we're telling them they can't. And I can't state with confidence that they're not doing something like that in a professional newsroom. I know what my experience was in a professional newsroom, and I know that I would discourage that among my employees. And yet it's a gray area. And so we try to use it for good. We've got a couple different projects. News summaries is a good one. We know people don't read a full 1,000-word story. So when you can tell them with 3 bullet points what the story is about, it can inform them more quickly, but also maybe it encourages them to read the full thing because they know what they're going to get. We also are looking at it to be crunch data for us, to be able to find patterns and trends, but then you get back to that fact-checking question. So it's all really on the border of being helpful. And we know the students are using it in so many other ways. And so we're really trying to navigate the right way to teach them to use it for the right type of work, but also recognize that they have to do original work on their own.
Okay, you're talking about mainly journalism students in that regard. We have a PR student on, Michael Kittilson. Michael, how is it different in the PR program?
We're not trying to do anything incredibly innovative as it relates to training others how to use artificial intelligence. We're still going about it in a way you would any other thing, where we're working in a team collaboratively, testing out different use cases for artificial intelligence and trying to solve problems with it. And one thing that we've been finding here that's been really interesting for us is the PRA program students were very worried that it could possibly replace the work that we're doing, especially at an entry level. And what we're finding instead is AI feels more like a team player rather than a replacement. Feels like another person at the end of the table helping us to achieve the work that we're doing. And so we're discovering, we wrote about this in the last Relevance Report too, Christina and I, it's not really AI versus humans, it's AI with humans. And in that spirit, we're able to do some incredible work with this tool that's having a 100x, 200x impact on a lot of the projects that we're working on.
You bring up a good point. And that was the theme, I think, in a lot of the essays in the Relevance Report about the human aspect of AI and how that has to be part of it. Jeff, what is your view on that? Do you think that agency staffing is going to change based on AI over the years?
Our jobs are already starting to evolve. So yeah, I think our jobs will change in how we get our work done. But I think our craft, communication, is inherently a human endeavor. And we've seen, similar to what others have talked about here, the best results come from humans and AI together, not working independently. And, it's interesting. Experience matters when working with AI. These systems now are getting so sophisticated and so convincing in their outputs. Absent experience and judgment, it's really easy to say something is good enough. And, we need experienced PR people with judgment to be able to look at what AI can assist us with and saying, is this good enough? Do we need to push harder? Do we need to go in a different direction? So, our jobs are changing already. For people that are just entering our field or our agency, we're already seeing the benefits of AI in helping people learn their craft faster and learn best practice faster. But there's also certainly a benefit to our senior staffers who have years of experience. And when they use AI, they can pull that experience and pull on that judgment that they have, and they can oftentimes get to even better results.
Have you sensed that, Sona? Do you see that AI is making employees more enthusiastic? Are they enjoying working with it? They find it a lot of value in it?
I don't know that our employees across the company have started using AI consistently. We have some tools that are available to everyone, but I would say that we're earlier in the process there. On the comms team, there's a lot of joy and efficiency that's coming from it, especially on our internal comms work. So the beneficiaries are employees. We're using a lot of different tools to keep employees informed and for the teams to work more efficiently. Like there's Glean that we're using to provide employees with access to information across different communications apps, productivity apps, and wikis. And then one of our favorite tools, which I think has benefited employees, is Axios HQ for our internal newsletters and some of our training materials. It actually has ChatGPT and DALL-E integrated into it, and we produce these weekly. And since adopting them, our open rates or click-through rates have been very, very high, like 72 to 84%. And
That's great.
like that's been pretty critical. They're very well loved resources for employees. So in that sense, there's a benefit.
We also found the same thing in our recent survey we're working on now, which has AI as a component. We found that corporations were using it primarily for internal communications, and that they found it very useful. Faryar, are you seeing the same thing in Encore?
There's no question. I think a lot of where we spend our time is on the internal side. So to Sona's point, I mean, we use a lot of interesting tools that make our lives a lot easier from a communications perspective. Since we're talking about tools and some tactics, we use one called Veed. Anytime we do an executive video where we might have a teleprompter and their eyes are tracking all over the place, I mean, that's always been the norm. It just changes and fixes their eyes. So it's focused on the screen. So now this like 10-minute video, it looks like they're speaking directly to the employee, and it's made a huge difference. And of course, for ethical reasons, we work with the person we're recording and say, are you okay with AI sort of taking over your eyes? And every time they watch it, they're like, yes, 100%. It looks perfect. So we don't get paid by Veed. We pay Veed, but it's been a huge, huge help.
Is anybody worried about the loss of jobs?
I've been worried on a different front. I'll just point out sourcing. I've found just in the last 2 years that it is harder to get a real human across the board. I'm not talking about customer service. We've been dealing with chatbots for years. I'm talking about like you're calling a big agency, whether that's government or a nonprofit, that you need to speak to someone and you're being put through a bunch of different filters before you can get a human on the phone. And particularly for training our young journalists, I worry about that. You can't develop a source if you're not ever really talking to the source. And it's seeming like it's happening at an increasing level. And particularly with what's happening with federal government workforce right now, I wonder how much of that is going to be even more so. Like if you can't get somebody on the phone at the IRS or whatever that may be, that's going to hurt lots of people. But particularly for journalists, how do you talk to humans if you've got all of these technological tools that are actually a barrier to that?
Christina, Al Golin used to say, don't let high tech replace high touch. Do you think that is what we're thinking about, Jeff? Do you think that's happening?
I think there's a balance. I think humans will always be central to how we're making, reputation decisions for brands. And when you pull humans out of the loop, you do it at your peril. We are not, at least in my agency, we are not focused on automation. We're focused on augmentation, and we're not trying to build a million agents that do everything for our people. We're focusing a lot more on how we can equip people to do the work that they do as humans better. So as an example of that, we have a campaign planning process that we've refined over the last 5 years. And our most experienced people in the agency have gone through and said, here's how you get to the best work. Here's how you do the right objectives and you do the right research, and it leads to a great strategy and creative ideas and multi-channel execution, all of it. We were sitting on best practice in front of us in this process. What we're using AI to do is unlock it. So we've built an assistant, we call it the Playbook Partner, and we're training up our teams. And what it allows us to do is to follow our own best practice and to do our work the way we've always known, what it takes to do good work. The assistant is simply helping us follow what we know leads to really, really strong earned-led campaigns.
Sona, you use the example of Steve Jobs using the bicycle of the mind. I thought that was an interesting analogy for all of this. How do you apply that?
I think in so many ways, it gives you an opportunity to unlock creativity. One application of just that thought and concept is all the time saved gives you an opportunity to collaborate with other people. And collaboration is truly a force multiplier and can unlock new creativity and new ideas. So that's kind of where we've been kind of thinking about that.
And Michael, you recently showed us a demonstration of creating a synthetic audience with AI and using that as a decision-making tool for a program for a client. How do you think that's going to change our work if we can create an audience that we can ask questions to and they'll give us answers that'll drive our strategy?
I'm lucky to be working with some incredible mentors, including you, Fred, and Christina, who's on my thesis committee as well. And a synthetic audience basically is just this culmination of digital proxies in which they act out as a certain persona or a certain audience. And it's almost a crystal ball. You can basically kind of message test and forecast communication strategies with a digital audience before even going out into the real world and doing this. So I always say that the AI tool will help companies with operability, efficiency, effectiveness in terms of their communication strategies at scale. But more so than anything, it helps teams completely shift their mindsets to being more proactive rather than reactive from a communication standpoint. And that's something in my mind that's really irreplaceable, is just seeing how the team this in a small group can really work together proactively to think through future problems and prevent problems before they even occur. And that's the whole point of the synthetic audience tool.
Sona, you talked about it a little bit before about creating guidelines for everyone that's using AI. Do you see that coming from any particular place, or is it a company by company standard that you set?
I think it's company by company, but I imagine we'll get into a rhythm of standards across our industry. There are very, very obvious ones, which I'm sure you'll all agree, which is that we should be using AI for scale and not necessarily strategy, although maybe that evolves as the tool evolves, and that authenticity and trust are most important. So you need to keep your messages focused on key audiences, not over communicate to everyone about everything just because you can. And finally, that being a first mover is pretty important, and experimenting is pretty important. Otherwise, you run the risk of truly falling behind.
How about in the agency world, Jeff? Are there any guidelines that you have established or you're using?
Yes, there are. And our parent company has also developed guidelines and policies that we adhere to. And what I'm encouraged by is the rules of the road are becoming a little bit clearer. As has happened in the past, the EU is leading with certain regulations. There are certain policies and guidelines. They're phasing things in over time, but they're making it very clear what's permissible, what's not, and what the penalties are when you don't adhere to some things. So my hope is that we'll see a little bit more clarity from regulatory bodies in the future. Right now, it's a little bit of a patchwork quilt of rules and regulations. You have countries with regulations around AI. You have states. You even have cities. So it's a lot to keep up on. But I think all of us are doing the best we can to stay on top of this shifting sort of landscape of rules and regulations and make sure we're adhering to them.
Are there clients, Jeff, that don't want you to use AI on their accounts?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say clients are entirely against it, forbidding it across the boards, but there are certain applications of it that certain clients just don't have an appetite for at this point in time, and that may change. I will say there's more deliberation by clients on thinking together with us on what is risky and what isn't. And there are a lot more open conversations about that, which is great, because if we're clear on how we're using it, clients understand how we're using it and the risks, we can integrate it in more ways and move faster together. So that open line of communication between client team and agency team is huge.
I was at a meeting yesterday, and there was a demonstration of the tools that are using AI to pitch media for media relations, which hasn't been high on the list of AI usage so far. Do you think that's something that we're going to see in the future?
I hope not. It's already assisting us and figuring out which journalists may actually have an interest in the story that we have to tell, so we don't waste time of journalists who just report on other things. It helps us think about how we craft a pitch that is compelling to people. But I hope we never get to the point of automated pitching. Journalists don't want that. Journalists that we talk to want relationships with people, and they want access to companies, and that comes through people, not bots. So I hope we don't get to that point. And to be honest, we've spent a lot of time evaluating lots of different tools that automate different aspects of media relations. And there's good and there's bad, but there's no substitute for a really great PR pro who has experience in
complete agreement. One-on-one relationships, authentic communications, relationships built over time, those are incredibly important. And AI is just an assistant here, and that maybe it helps with analytics or helping forecast the right timing or the right outlet. But media relations should remain something that's based on personal communication.
Fred, there's also something interesting happening now that we're beginning to see in different markets materialize, and that certain media outlets are scrutinizing content that's coming from companies and PR people very closely. And if you're sending an asset that you're hoping that they'll use in covering a story and it's generated by AI and you haven't told them about it, they may not cover it. Some have policies that they will not use AI-assisted content in their reporting at all. So that's also a big caution for people to not allow the machines to do all your homework for you, because some of the very outlets you're pitching may not use what you're pitching them if it's entirely created by AI.
But Christina, you talked earlier that media companies are using AI to create their stories. So why would they object to pitches done by AI?
And also, can you even tell anymore? My mom recently created a small business and she's using it for everything. Like, write a summary of my fitness offering here. And then she's plugging it into a press release that I'm helping her with. So there's sort of like a moral inconsistency here of like, why should any journalist be against any of this? Because this is now a common tool the same way, the cell phone. And I feel like we are entering into a place where it's going to be, again, like what Michael and I referenced, like that alongside the human, because you can use the tools to do all that perfunctory vote counting, math, adding up, all of those things. But you have to go talk to the person who's boxing up their stuff who just got fired, right? In addition to all the number crunching that you're doing.
So you don't see a day where one computer is pitching another computer?
I'd be surprised.
As we look into the future, though, if we did a relevance report next year on AI, which I'm not sure we're going to do, but what would you think you would be writing about a year from now, Faryar?
A year from now, my hope is some of the fear and angst around AI has sort of gone away. People have a better understanding of it, or familiarity, and it's just another tool in the toolbox. Like, we talk about this thing as if it's this, and it is. I mean, it's a very abstract, big thing. But I'll tell you, like, a lot of the conversations we have inside the company can be solved by just having the same nomenclature when we talk about these things. And, I think a lot of people think it's going to replace us. A lot of people think it's a huge data risk. A lot of people think it's going to just completely replace a variety of tasks that we do on any given day. That might all be true, but I hope a year from now, people have just figured it out and they've said, this is how we need to use it within our company. And so it's just another tool in the toolbox, as I said.
Who do you think is going to do the education? Is it universities, Christina, or is it PR firms, Jeff, or is it outside companies? Who's going to educate our coworkers on AI?
Teenagers.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that, because, when social media became the new thing in public relations, everyone hired young people because they lived on the internet. They knew all the social platforms. So all the older people were hiring young people. I don't think that's the case with AI. I don't think that teenagers are any more conversant with AI than people my age. And I think it's going to require more training for younger people than social media did.
I think that, to your point of the differences in training that we might need for people just entering our field versus senior staffers, people that are, that we're hiring right out of college, they understand the mechanics of using AI. We don't need to teach them how to prompt. What we do need to teach them, though, is how to make really good decisions, how to vet what they're seeing. And that comes from experience. So like our senior staffers, I think we went into our AI transformation thinking our younger employees are just going to magically get this and get it really fast and so on. And we may have to bring our senior people along. In some ways, the opposite's true. people are able to work with these tools very quickly and get to really, really good outputs with them fast. Whereas what we need to do with our younger employees is really help them develop as practitioners, help give them judgment and guidance so that they can use these tools. They get the mechanics of it already. When they come into our workforce, what they need is experience and judgment, and that makes them better at being able to take advantage of AI.
I think that's what I would write about too. If I had the opportunity, it would be the best way to learn how to use AI is to not use it at all, which is kind of contradictory. But we wrote about this building off of an essay that Christina and I wrote, Misinformation or Disinformation with a Thumb Swipe. AI proves those who know. And what we did in the Relevance Report this year is we sent out a quiz with some real headlines with real photos and some fake headlines with fake photos. And it was all around climate. And what we found were the climate experts came extremely close to getting a perfect score. They knew what was real and what was fake. People that did not know anything about climate guessed and got like 2 out of 10 on every quiz. And so I think that's something to encourage people that want to use artificial intelligence and really know how to use it well. Don't use it. Try to do something that we did in Fred's class this last semester, which is try something new every week. Look into something new every week, learn something new every week so that you can expand your horizons a little more. And if you see some of this content out there, or if you are using the tool, you'll be able to make better judgment, as Jeff's mentioning. And that can really, really help with your skills moving forward.
The judgment question is one, we haven't really touched on this yet, but it's where I have my biggest concerns about AI is about imagery. Even in the first month of the Trump administration, like the president himself is sharing an AI created video, imagining what Gaza could look like in the future. And I see a lot more of that kind of content creation that is bordering on, is this real? Who created this? And people are, you could say the word lazy or you could say the word busy, but either one is a problem because people share it with intense speed and move on to the next thing that they can share without checking. And even since we wrote this essay for the current report, the fact-checking has ended at Meta. The PolitiFact guy that I quote in our essay no longer has that contract. And that's happening, very rapidly.
Who is going to be doing that, Christina? The big social media platforms are not doing it. Companies are not yet doing it in a very specific way. Who's responsible for the fact-checking, making sure that there's accuracy out there?
There's all kinds of potential innovation out there, whether that's humans who build a tool or humans who are out there fighting this fight. But I don't know that you can keep up with it. I really don't. And I have deep concerns about that because it can't all be personal responsibility because we know people are already not taking that personal responsibility. And some of the stuff is harmless. Somebody posted the other day on Facebook a picture of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce like sitting in front of the Christmas tree. And I'm like, oh, they did Christmas cards together. No, actually, this is a doctored image from him with his last girlfriend. And like everybody was commenting how cute they look in front of the tree. And like, that's harmless, but is it really harmless? And I just worried, it's not going to get done and you can't keep up.
I met with her publicist recently, and she said that she spends most of her time not suggesting stories about Taylor, but correcting stories because there's so much misinformation out there. Her full-time job is just doing the corrections.
I know that like 2/3 of Americans are concerned about deepfakes being in the ecosystem. And for Yahoo News, we really do remain a credible news and information site. We have a number of different measures in place, but we also started working with McAfee late last year for deepfake image tech that we've been having in place as kind of another form of accuracy.
Michael, I know you're very involved in AI. But do you feel like people coming out of our programs are sufficiently aware of AI and they're knowledgeable and know how to use the tools?
Yeah, I'd say so. We're seeing, as Christina mentioned, a lot of innovation opportunities. And I think my generation is looking to bridge those gaps. I was just at a meeting yesterday at the Irvine Young Academy, which is a bunch of student entrepreneurs that are making pitches to venture capitalists right now for their own startups while they're here at USC. And one of them is building a tool that can tell what's real and what's fake with AI generated stuff. And it leads to a lot of opportunities. So whether it's as simple as we have a couple of undergrad freshmen that are using AI to learn how to cook for themselves, to this graduate student entrepreneur who's trying to solve the mis and disinformation crisis going on with AI-generated content. It's just providing a ton of opportunities that augment or really enhance your daily routine. And so it's pretty cool to watch. I think that people are really starting to lean into the tool, and it's making us better professionals all around.
Thanks, Michael. This is sort of a use your imagination. If you could invent an AI tool that you would want for yourself to use in your work or at home, what could AI do for you, Jeff?
I want a reputation simulator. That's what I want.
And what does that do?
It would allow me to go in to any situation and with some degree of certainty, be able to predict how reputation would change based on the decisions I make. If I say this versus that, if I communicate in this place versus that. There are bits and pieces of a solution like that exists today. But I want one system that I can use for managing reputation and all decisions. That would be great.
What would you invent?
I think that's a good one. So we translate every single thing we do into 5 languages every day. There are tools out there that help with that quite a lot. But I mean, anything that makes our executives speak in the native language or that we're trying to speak to a lot more clearly and I guess at times creatively, I think would be really great. I think those exist, but they're not perfect. And so that's great. Personally, though, I would tell you, I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. If anybody could create a tool that helps me understand what the hell they're talking about and know what they mean. I hear the words saying, I don't know what they mean. So that would be helpful.
Different kind of translation tool. We'll work on that. Sona, how about you?
I'm with Jeff. I want, a tool that can help us like simulate scenarios so we can plan, forecast. And I know there are some things kind of in the mix, like Michael was talking about the audience simulator. There's a version of that for internal communications and decision making. There's like Signal AI for forecasting. There are a lot of tools already out there, but I think making them even more accessible so we can analyze in real time, not even just for preparedness.
How do you create this culture where you're encouraging people to use AI, you're supporting them in that, but how do you create that culture? How do you get people excited about it?
I'm sure everybody on this call will have tips. I think one thing is creating safe spaces for exploration. Let people have room to be able to fail sometimes because then they get comfortable. I think making sure that senior people in organizations and people who are in positions of authority are modeling the behaviors that we want. Our CEO is going through our learning and development plan right now.
You got to lean into it. And I love the point about everybody has to simulate that. I think, these notions of intellectual curiosity are obviously really important. Building resiliency in the culture, to the point you made, Jeff. In my essay, I wrote you have to get back to basic governance and blocking and tackling because this thing will continue to evolve every single day, every single year. So how do you withstand that? How do you build a culture, to the point you made, around, we know it's going to change, but we are, as a culture, going to change. We're just going to adapt with it. So I think that's important. Those soft skills are going to be just as important as they are or have been for many years.
Maybe emphasizing that, humans will always be important in the ecosystem, and that relationships and team building and creativity and instincts, they're all fundamental to what we do, and what we do will always be human first.
Well, I think being humans first is a good place to end. We're all humans, and we're all here talking about AI. And we'll see what happens a year from now. Be interesting. Be like Billie Eilish on Vanity Fair. We'll come back every year and find out what has changed in 12 months. A huge thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their firsthand experiences on AI's evolving role in communications. It's clear that AI is transforming our industry and will continue to do so. But hearing directly from the experts about how top companies are balancing efficiency with human judgment and adopting AI strategically rather than just rushing in has been really insightful. If you want to dive deeper, and I highly recommend you do, you can download the full Relevance Report at annenberg.usc.edu/relevance. Or you can find the link in the description on this episode. And if you're curious to learn more about our speakers, you can check out their bios in the show notes. Also, make sure to stay updated with the PR Future by subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. This episode was produced by Javier Contreras, Joe Carrion, Anahita Maran, Marshall Winfield, and executive produced by Ron Antoinette. I'm Fred Cook, and this has been PR Future. Thanks for listening.